This week's Torah portion is Sukkot. The Torah reading comes from Leviticus 22:26 through 23:44. The prophet's reading comes from Zechariah 14:1 through 21, and the gospel part of the reading comes from Luke 2:1 through 20. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "When a bull, a sheep, or a goat is born, then it is to remain 7 days with its mother, and from the 8th day onward it will be accepted as the gift of an offering made by fire to Adonai. If it is a cow or ewe, you are not to slaughter it along with its young, both in 1 day. When you offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving to Adonai, you are to present it so that you may be accepted. It is to be eaten on the same day. You are to leave none of it until morning. I am Adonai. So you are to keep my mitzvot and do them. I am Adonai. You must not profane my holy name, for I will be made holy among Bnei Israel. I am Adonai who makes you holy, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai." Then Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Bnei Israel, and tell them, these are the appointed Moedim of Adonai, which you are to proclaim to be holy convocations, my Moedim. Work may be done for 6 days, but on the 7th day is a Shabbat of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You are to do no work. It is a Shabbat to Adonai in all your dwellings. Pesach and Feast of Matzot. These are the appointed feast of Adonai, holy convocations, which you are to proclaim in their appointed season. During the first month, on the 14th day of the month in the evening, is Adonai's Passover. On the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Matzot to Adonai. For 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day you are to have a holy convocation, and you shall do no regular work. Instead, you are to present an offering made by fire to Adonai for 7 days. On the 7th day is a holy convocation, when you are to do no regular work." Bikurim and Shavuot. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Bnei Israel, and tell them, when you have come into the land which I give to you, and reap its harvest, then you are to bring the omer of the firstfruits of your harvest to the Kohen. He is to wave the omer before Adonai to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Shabbat, the Kohen is to wave it. On the day when you wave the omer, you are to offer a male lamb without blemish, 1 year old, as a burnt offering to Adonai. The grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to Adonai for a soothing aroma. Its drink offering with it shall be 1/4 of a gallon of wine. You are not to eat bread, roasted grain, or fresh grain until this same day, until you have brought the offering of your God. It is a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings." Then you are to count from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the omer of the wave offering, 7 complete Shabbatot. Until the morrow after the 7th Shabbat, you are to count 50 days, and then present a new grain offering to Adonai. You are to bring out of your houses 2 loaves of bread for a wave offering made of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour. They are to be baked with hamatz as first fruits to Adonai. You are to present, along with the bread, 7 one-year-old lambs without blemish, 1 young bull, and 2 rams. They will become a burnt offering to Adonai, with their meal offering and their drink offerings, an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to Adonai. Also you are to offer 1 male goat for a sin offering, and a pair of year-old male lambs for a sacrifice of fellowship offerings. The Cohen is to wave them with the bread of the firstfruits as a wave offering before Adonai with the 2 lambs. They should be holy to Adonai for the Cohen. You are to make a proclamation on the same day that there is to be a holy convocation, and you shall do no regular work. This is a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. Now when you reap the harvest of your land, you are not to reap the furthest corners of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Rather, you are to leave them for the poor and for the outsider. I am Adonai your God. Fall Festivals. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Bnei Yisrael, saying, In the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you are to have a Shabbat rest, a memorial of blowing shofarot, a holy convocation. You are to do no regular work, and you are to present an offering made by fire to Adonai. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, However, the 10th day of the 7th month is Yom Kippur, a holy convocation to you. So you are to afflict yourselves. You are to bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. You are not to do any kind of work on that set day, for it is Yom Kippur, to make atonement for you before Adonai your God. For anyone who does not deny himself on that day must be cut off from his people. Anyone who does any kind of work on that day, that person I will destroy from among his people. You shall do no kind of work. It is a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It is to be a Shabbat of solemn rest for you, and you are to humble your souls. On the 9th day of the month in the evening, from evening until evening, you are to keep your Shabbat. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Bnei Yisrael, and say, On the 15th day of this 7th month is the feast of Sukkot, for 7 days to Adonai. On the 1st day there is to be a holy convocation. You are to do no laborious work. For 7 days you are to bring an offering by fire to Adonai. The 8th day will be a holy convocation to you, and you are to bring an offering by fire to Adonai. It is a solemn assembly. You shall do no laborious work. These are the Moedim of Adonai, which you are to proclaim to be holy convocations, to present an offering by fire to Adonai, a burnt offering, a grain offering, a sacrifice, and drink offerings, each on its own day, besides those of the Shabbatot of Adonai, and besides your gifts, all your vows, and all your freewill offerings which you give to Adonai. So on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruits of the land, you are to keep the feast of Adonai for 7 days. This first day is to be a Shabbat rest, and the 8th day will also be a Shabbat rest. On the first day you are to take choice fruit of trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook, and rejoice before Adonai your God for 7 days. You are to celebrate it as a festival to Adonai for 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. You are to celebrate it in the 7th month. You are to live in Sukkot for 7 days. All the native born in Israel are to live in a Sukkot, so that your generations may know that I had Bnei Yisrael dwell in Sukkot when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Adonai your God. So Moses declared to Bnei Yisrael the Moedim of Adonai. The prophet's reading, Zechariah 14:1 through 21. Behold, a day of Adonai is coming, when your plunder will be divided in your midst. I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to wage war. The city shall be captured, the houses ransacked, and the women ravished. Half of the city will be exiled, but the remainder of the people will not be cut off from the city. Then Adonai will go forth and fight against those nations, as he fights in a day of battle. In that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which lies to the east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a huge valley. Half of the mountain will move toward the north, and half of it toward the south. Then you will flee through my mountain valley, because the mountain valley will reach to Azel. Yes, you will flee like you fled from the earthquake in the days of King Uzziah of Judah. Then Adonai my God will come, and all the Kedoshim with him. In that day there will be no light, cold, or frost. It will be a day known only to Adonai, neither day nor night. Even in the evening time there will be light. Moreover, in that day living waters will flow from Jerusalem, half toward the eastern sea and half toward the western sea, both in the summer and in the winter. Adonai will then be king over all the earth. In that day Adonai will be Echad, and his name Echad. The whole land from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, will become like the Arabah. Jerusalem will be raised up and occupy her place. From the Benjamin gate to the place of the first gate, to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the king's wine presses, people will dwell in her, and no longer will there be a ban of destruction. Jerusalem will live in security. Now this is the plague with which Adonai will strike all the peoples that wage war against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they are standing on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. It will happen in that day that a great panic from Adonai will be among them. Each person will seize the hand of his neighbor, and they will attack each other. Even Judah will fight in Jerusalem. The wealth of all the surrounding peoples will be gathered together, an abundance of gold, silver, and apparel. A similar plague will strike the horse, the mule, the camel, the donkey, and all the animals in that camp. Then all the survivors from all the nations that attacked Jerusalem will go up from year to year to worship the King Adonai Zavaot, and to celebrate Sukkot. Furthermore, if any of the nations on earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King Adonai Zavaot, they will have no rain. If the Egyptians do not go up and celebrate, they will have no rain. Instead, there will be the plague that Adonai will inflict on the nations that do not go up to celebrate Sukkot. This will be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all the nations that do not go up to celebrate. In that day, holy to Adonai will be inscribed on the bells of the horses, and the pots in the house of Adonai will be like the sacred bowls in front of the altar. In fact, every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah will be holy to Adonai Zavaot, so that everyone who comes to sacrifice will take them and cook in them. In that day there will no longer be a Canaanite in the house of Adonai Zavaot. And this week's gospel reading is Luke 2, verses 1 through 20. On the third day there was a wedding at Cana in the Galilee. Yeshua's mother was there, and Yeshua and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, Yeshua's mother said to him, "They don't have any wine." Yeshua said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with you and me? My hour hasn't come yet." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone jars used for the Jewish ritual of purification, each holding 2 to 3 measures. Yeshua said to them, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them up to the top. Then he said to them, "Take some water out and give it to the head waiter." And they brought it. Now the head waiter did not know where it had come from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew. As the head waiter tasted the water that had become wine, he calls to the bridegroom and says to him, "Everyone brings out the good wine first, and whenever they are drunk, then the worst. But you've reserved the good wine until now." Yeshua did this, the first of the signs in Cana of the Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Yeshua purges the temple. After this, Yeshua went down to Capernaum with his mother, brothers, and disciples, and they stayed there a few days. The Jewish feast of Passover was near, so Yeshua went up to Jerusalem. In the temple, he found the merchants selling oxen, sheep, and doves. Also, the money changers were sitting there. Then he made a whip of cords and drove them all out of the temple, both the sheep and oxen. He dumped out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those selling doves, he said, "Get these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace." His disciples remembered that it is written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." The Judean leaders responded, "What sign do you show us, since you are doing these things?" "Destroy this temple," Yeshua answered them, "and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Judean leaders then said to him, 46 years this temple was being built, and you will raise it up in 3 days? But he was talking about the temple of his body. So after he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he was talking about this. Then they believed the scripture and the word that Yeshua had spoken. Now, when he was in Jerusalem for Passover during the feast, many believed in his name, seeing the signs he was doing. But Yeshua did not entrust himself to them, because he knew all men. He did not need anyone to testify about man, for he knew what was in man. Amen.